You're watching What She Said on YouTube.
Welcome back to What She Said. I'm Christine Bentley in studio with Kate Wheeler, and joining us now in studio is David Fetter, a therapist with more than 30 years experience, whose practice is now very much concentrated on recovering from infidelity, and more recently on helping people and their partners and families who suffer from sex addictions.
That's right.
Good morning, David.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So your website is called My Life After an Affair. So what prompted you to get into this field, of all fields?
Well, it's a really good place to start. What I realized was that there was a void in the services being offered to people who are recovering from infidelity, and that's true whether they were wanting to recover and stay together or whether they wanted to actually part. So that was certainly one of the things that one of the points that attracted me to offering a specialized service. What I also realized was that and believed was that there were more people separating after infidelity that needed to. But what was missing was an alternative to recover and actually heal from the experience. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to offer that service. I want to offer or mention that there's a caveat, and the caveat is that there are people who need to separate. And when I mean need to separate, it would be because of couples where there's abuse of some sort. And I don't think that it would be professionally responsible of me to counsel people to stay together unless that issue is addressed. The other point that prompted me to offer this service was because I was concerned about the children. People who experience infidelity and end up separating. They often separate with a tremendous amount of animosity towards one another, resulting in high conflict separations. And what we know about high conflict separations is that children do the worst.
All right. So, but it used to be that if there was infidelity, you were told, or I don't know, my parents' generation maybe, it was like make a list, like the good side and the bad side. Like if you go, what will happen? Or can you stay? Do you stay for the sake of the children? Can you forgive your partner? Is he a good provider? Does he hurt you? Look at your life situation. Would you be better off or worse off? Has that thinking changed?
I think that's still a part of it. But when people are staying together for those reasons, and they're not taking the time and making the effort to recover themselves, then they're missing half the battle. And I think infidelity is an opportunity for people to actually get better, and actually learn from the experience.
You mean a couple to actually get better, or for a person?
Either
a relationship can recover back to
either as a couple
bloom
or
of youth?
Sorry?
This first bloom of romance, they can get back there?
That may be a bit of a stretch, but I think that my personal bias is that if people stay together or if they part, there's a lesson to be learned. And I have seen in my practice, I've definitely seen many people, get to a very, very good place because what we do is we build a relationship based on honesty and openness and better communication. Often those are variables that are lacking.
Well,
lacking prior to the issue.
Speaking about honest and open, I mean, isn't one of sort of the foundations of a good relationship trust? And once that is broken, I mean, can that really be fixed with therapy? I can't see it being ever fixable for me.
It's certainly a challenge, and it's a very, very important part of the recovery process after infidelity has been discovered or disclosed. But it's an important and it's a critical component. I'm not going to fool anybody and say that you get back to this blissful place where people trusted unconditionally. I think that is damaged, and it's, I think in most cases, permanently damaged. But it doesn't mean that we can't rebuild trust. And but the rebuilding of trust is a dynamic process that involves both parties to be involved in.
But is this then a form of settling where people just learn to live with what's left? Or do you really feel that they're rebuilding something else? It may not be perfect, but it's better than the alternative.
I certainly don't think it's settling. I think that if you have if a person or a couple experiences infidelity and they don't do the work to recover, then they're settling. If they, because there are many people who will, where there'll be an infidelity, or one of the partners will cheat, and couples will stay together and not engage in therapy and just allow the passage of time to allow things to, they say, heal. But what ends up happening is that there's really no healing taking place. What ends up happening is that the pain and the suffering and the, that occurred as a result of the infidelity ends up, going further and further away into the distance. But I don't think it's settling. I think when couples stay together, they don't do the work, they don't grieve the loss of the relationship as it was and start rebuilding a new relationship, then they're settling. In my practice, one of the things we definitely focus on is building a relationship based on honesty, based on good communication, and based on a clear explanation, a clear sharing by each partner as to what each person needs in the relationship. And those kind of conversations, what I find when working with couples, I find that those kind of conversations really haven't ever taken place. Where they may have taken place was prior to marriage when they were, meeting with a priest or a rabbi in a pre-marriage course. But, once that happens, years and years later, people stop sharing those, what they expect, what their goals are, how their vision has changed for the relationship, where they're not happy, what they need to be improved. So, by rebuilding and doing that work after the affair, and rebuilding the trust, which was, I think, your original question, which I got away from, then we have a couple who are actually able to build a true relationship.
So what's your success rate? How many couples stay together?
I find personally, in my practice that the success rate is probably between 65 and 70%, which is astounding, actually, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, that is surprising. Now, has it changed over the years in the proportion of men to women who have affairs? More women having affairs?
That's another interesting question. I think statistics in general that we have indicate that more women are having affairs. Statistics rather are a funny animal, in the sense that you never have true statistics, because most people having affairs don't tell anybody they're having an affair. So, but of the people who we do know of who are having affairs, what we see is that both parties are having affairs, with more women having affairs. My practice, interestingly enough, right now has more women who are cheating than men.
Do you think that's because of a rise in sites like Ashley Madison? Life's short, have an affair?
That more women are? I think it's a number of factors. I think that's one of them. I think another factor is that people are. There's a statistic actually that tells us that there's a 30% drop in empathy and a 30% increase in, getting what I want and taking what I want. So, when there's those kind of statistics and there's that change in society, that 30% drop in empathy, 30% increase in entitlement, it's another factor. I think the fact that more women are working, fewer women are fully dependent on men, are other factors as well.
Well, it's pretty sad that getting ahead in the world and on a level means that this is the outcome, this is the result. You're going to be unfaithful. What about open marriages? How do they play? Do you think they work?
I don't see too many open marriages. Certainly, I have seen some couples who are, where at least one couple is into an alternative type of relationship. Um, I think just my opinion is that if both parties are comfortable with the alternative lifestyle, then it can work. I don't have any personal statistics, and I don't really know of any statistics, but I do have people in my practice where one person is into an alternative type of relationship, and the other spouse isn't, and it creates a tremendous amount of difficulty for that couple.
You're watching What She Said on YouTube.
Welcome back to What She Said. We are talking today with David Feder, a therapist who works with people that have infidelity issues and also helps determine whether it's an infidelity issue or sex addiction. Now, a lot of people would just say it's an excuse for bad behavior. Is there such a thing as a sex addiction?
Well, I think so.
I guess you do, as you're making a career about it. What classifies, what is a sex addiction?
Well, sex addiction, or people, excuse me, people suffering from a sex addiction, first of all, it's an illness. It's considered an intimacy disorder. And basically people who are experiencing a sexual addiction are engaged in a compulsive behavior which they are really unable to control.
So would, we've been talking obviously today about the story coming out of the CBC, would BDSM be considered, BDSM play, be considered a sex addiction or a predilection?
I think it really depends on the people involved, the people who are engaged in it, and how they feel about what they're doing.
So how would you define a sex addict then?
As I say, a sex addict is a person who is engaged in a compulsive acting out behavior or behaviors. Very often there's a series of behaviors that the person is engaged in. You don't see a person who is a sex addict just, for example, or very seldom would you see a person simply masturbating. A person would combine that ultimately with pornography or some other form of acting out behavior.
Well, by that definition, though, somebody who is a serial cheater, are they necessarily a sex addict?
Every person has to be assessed independently. I would say that if a person is a serial cheater and unable to stop that behavior, because a sex addict on his or her own would not be able to stop the compulsive acting out behavior. So when I'm in my office, and as a matter of fact, it just happened about a week or so ago, when I was meeting with somebody who presented with their partner as a person who had been unfaithful, but after taking some information down and doing a social history, I realized that this person was involved in many different affairs, which prompted me to begin to assess them for sex addiction.
So are people born that way? The brain wired differently? What?
I wouldn't say people are born that way. Sex addicts are involved, or shall we say, born into families that are rigid. There may be abuse, whether it be physical or emotional, sometimes sexual. It may be, it may be that their parents are themselves involved in some kind of addictive behavior, which culminates or comes together in really poor parenting, because these kids, the kids from these families are basically left to their own devices to deal with a rather unstable family. They don't get direction. Their normal development is arrested, and they're left to their own devices. So, just as some kids would be exposed to alcohol, some kids would be exposed to drugs. Others are exposed to sex, and sex feels good, it is a temporary relief for pain or for emotional distress, and what starts innocently enough ultimately becomes habitual, and once it's habitual, it becomes a problem.
Now, you have said previously that usually sex addicts, that's not their only addiction. They have other addictions coupled.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a product again of their upbringing?
I wouldn't say necessarily everything would relate to upbringing. Certainly what I believe is that in order to, it's just like any other addiction. What happens is a person will need to do more of the same to get their rush, to get their high. Similarly speaking, a person may have to combine it with another addiction, such as cocaine, for example, to really get that rush. So things develop, along those lines, and while other people will shift off from one addiction to the other. So it could be an eating disorder, it could be a drug addiction, it could be whatever.
So let me ask you, they come to you. Is there a cure for this? Can you cure them, or are you just managing it?
Just like, if we look at alcohol for a moment, there's no cure for alcohol, but people learn to live a better life, and people learn to how to manage and how to live without alcohol. The same is true for any addiction. And when we're talking about sex addiction, what we're doing is we're helping that person live a more wholesome life, a better life, without having to engage in compulsive acting out behaviors.
So I'm a little confused in how you determine whether somebody's just a cheater or a sex addict. Because, is there a number that goes with it? Because you said the one client, you said you found that there were more people involved than perhaps the spouse thought, so you changed your theory. So how do you determine it?
To determine someone's a sex addict, certainly you want to be careful about that type of a label, and so the actual assessment for sex addiction would involve taking a very, very good social history, as well as sexual history, and also there are some testing instruments that we use that would indicate whether or not a person is a sex addict. So one of the tests we use is one where a test that has been given to tens of thousands of sex addicts and non-sex addicts, and what we've gleaned from the experience and from the information that's been gained is that there's a cutoff point, and so it's not just based on a clinician's opinion. It is supported with testing that is also done.
So David, let me ask you, if we're talking about sex addicts and you're saying that part of the determination is that maybe the frequency, but is it also, does the very act itself change? Do they need to have, I don't know, more aggressive,
more adventurous
wilder,
yeah,
to get the high? So does the actual act itself change?
Over time?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that the best answer is a short answer, and it is yes, it does. And it's simple. It's similar to I think that it's helpful to think of it in terms of consuming alcohol. That a person who is, shall we say, intoxicated after 3 or 4 drinks is ultimately, if as they keep drinking, is going to need more drinks to reach the same high. So it's what we might see in a sex addict is that they may start by looking at pornography, then they may combine that with masturbating and pornography. The type of pornography they look at may change as well. And that's just one example, but there are many other varieties of acting out behavior, compulsive acting out.
How has then, I'm just thinking about the access to pornography for young teenagers, even younger children on the internet now. What kind of an impact do you think that's having on the psyche?
It's a huge impact, and it's probably the variable or the stimulus that's having the greatest impact in the field of sex addiction today. What we know is that children are being exposed to pornography at a much earlier age, with the average age being around 10 or 11 right now. And these are children who are, first of all, their brain isn't fully myelinated. These are children who, it's questionable and it's doubtful as to how they process this information. And, it's not only, if you think about simple, if there's such a thing, simple pornography, or what you would expect in terms of pornography, there are so many different variations available on the internet today that it's, in my opinion, it's frightening that children are being exposed at such a young age. And through that, not only learning about getting a distorted view of what sex is, but also getting a distorted view of intimacy and a distorted view of relationships. So it's extremely frightening. The internet is also not only having a huge impact on children and adolescents, but it's also having a huge impact on adults, because with the presence of the internet, anybody can look at pornography or any kind of questionable sexual behavior 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have it readily accessible, whether you're looking at it on your computer, your iPad, your tablet, or your phone. So it's really quite frightening. And one of the things that I recently told my wife is that we are a generation now that's perhaps the first generation that can actually be unfaithful and cheat on your partner while lying in bed next to them.
Absolutely. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I know that's scary. I think what concerns me a lot about the younger generation that is growing up with this is, as you said, it's changing their perception of what's a normal relationship, or what's a normal, I'm using normal in quotes here, normal, usual sexual behavior, or how to treat someone, or what's expected, or what a woman would like. I think it's just alarming that our children are seeing this, and it's very hard to control, because yes, you can have all your blocks on your computer at home, but if they've got a smartphone, if they go somewhere else, if they go to a friend's house, to me, it's one of the biggest concerns that we've got about young boys in particular's perception of young girls.
Well, and that's why, in the field, we anticipate that we're just on the cusp of what the problem is really going to be. That as these kids get a little bit older and get into, whatever kind of relationship that they form, it's going to just be a huge problem that we have to be prepared for.
So what do you say to young people? What do you say to them about what they see?
Well, if a lot of that depends on the relationship that parents have with their children. Many of the I believe that many parents don't even know what their children are doing.
Well, that's been forever the case. Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been fascinating. Now, your website is called AfterAnAffair.com?
MyLifeAfterAnAffair.com.
MyLifeAfterAnAffair.com. And you also you do consultations through Skype too, as well?
Yes, I'm fortunate enough to have a number of people who have contacted me through my website and live, through the United States. There's a gentleman in Spain that I've been working with, and it really has opened up the, reaching out to people. I just wanted to say, if I have a moment, is that the treatment for sex addiction is not simply, or is not only individual therapy. It's individual therapy for both the partner and individual therapy for the addict himself. So both people need to be involved. There's also involvement in a 12-step group and in a therapeutic group as well.
Thank you very much for telling us all about it. We'll have you back. Fascinating.
Thanks so much.
Discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.